Welcome to African News Update with me, Selbin Kabote. The headlines. A target for achieving full vaccination rates of 40% across Africa has been missed by the World Health Organization. Sudan's Prime Minister appears on state television to announce his resignation following a military coup. Africa Cup of Nations tournament is being disrespected due to racism, claims former England striker Ian Wright. More than half of black children in the UK are now growing up in poverty, official data reveals. And dismay as the UK's first specialist black bookshop is forced to close. A target for achieving 40% vaccination rates across the world has been missed in most African countries. The World Health Organization put forward the goal in early 2021, but only 9% of people on the continent have been fully vaccinated against COVID so far. These low rates of vaccination have been of particular concern following the identification of the Omicron variant in South Africa and its rapid global spread in recent weeks. Over 3 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered in the world so far. Of these, about 1 billion have gone to rich countries, which have a population of about 14% of the world, while mid and low-income ones have reportedly only received leftovers. COVAX, a global coalition that was set by the World Health Organization and several non-profit organizations to deliver COVID-19 vaccines to developing countries, has so far delivered less than 90 million doses of the 2 billion it was supposed to deliver by the end of 2021. Strive Masiyiwa, the Zimbabwean billionaire founder of Econet Global, blames the failure on deliberate global health inequality. Masiyiwa was asked to help procure vaccines for the African Union, said this was a deliberate global architecture of unfairness. At a summit on vaccine equity last June, he said, "Imagine we live in a village and there is a drought. There's not going to be enough bread, and the richest guys grab the baker and they take control of the production of bread, and we all have to go to those guys and have to ask them for a loaf of bread." This is the architecture that is in place. According to latest figures from the World Health Organization, just 7 countries on the African continent have reached the 40% target. Of the countries on the mainland of Africa, only Morocco, Tunisia, Botswana, and Rwanda have exceeded the target. Countries in the south of the continent are doing considerably better than elsewhere in sub-Saharan Africa. As of 30 December 2021, just under half of the countries on the continent have achieved more than 10% of the population fully vaccinated, a target the World Health Organization has set for the end of September last year, and which was missed by most African nations. Many countries, including some of the continent's largest, have so far vaccinated fewer than 5% of their populations. Nigeria has fully vaccinated 2.1%, Ethiopia 3.5%, Democratic Republic of Congo 0.1%. The only country on the continent not to have begun a vaccination program is Eritrea. The World Health Organization has set a further target of 70% coverage for all countries by June 2022, but this could also be missed across Africa. As things stand, predictions are that Africa may not reach the 70% vaccination coverage target until August 2024, World Health Organization Africa Regional Director Matshidiso Moeti says. World Health Organization data also found that fewer than 15% of COVID-19 cases in African countries are correctly reported. Overall, nearly 60 million people contracted the virus in the continent, though even that number might not be accurate given the small reach of testing in the region. According to official statistics, only about 8.5 million cases of COVID-19 have been identified in African countries, which have a total population of nearly 1.4 billion people, suggesting underreporting of cases. The World Health Organization says Africa needs more than 900 million vaccine doses to fully vaccinate 40% of its population. The biggest problem facing the COVAX scheme, which many African states were relying on, was its dependence on vaccines from the Serum Institute of India, the world's biggest vaccine maker. Wealthier countries have signed deals with manufacturers for prospective vaccines as early as July 2020, and while they were still in development and undergoing trials. They were given priority by manufacturers, making it difficult for the COVAX scheme, the African Union, and individual countries to secure doses. In September last year, a COVAX statement said it was reducing its estimate of the number of doses it expects to receive going into 2022. Abdalla Hamdok has appeared on state television to announce his resignation as Sudan's prime minister. The announcement came 6 weeks after the Western-backed civilian leader had returned to the post following his overthrow and house arrest in a military coup on October the 25th. Reports citing sources close to Hamdok say he was fed up with the decision of Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the top military commander and leader of the coup, to restore the widely feared intelligence service, as well with his refusal to allow the prime minister to freely appoint members of his cabinet. Hamdok had only been reinstated as part of a controversial deal that he signed with al-Burhan in November that also said elections would be held in July 2023. But while Western leaders pushing for Hamdok's restoration swiftly welcomed him back, the sprawling pro-democracy movement saw his return as a fig leaf that legitimized the coup and ensured the military's dominance. With Hamdok now gone, analysts say the military may look to co-opt a new civilian face to retrieve billions of dollars in much-needed foreign aid, which was suspended following the coup. At least 57 protesters have been killed in mass rallies that have gripped Sudan since the coup and continued following the November 21 deal between al-Burhan and Hamdok, according to medics as reported by Al Jazeera. As AFCON gears up to begin in Cameroon, former England and Arsenal striker Ian Wright has said the coverage of the tournament is tinged with racism. According to the popular British sporting personality, the Africa Cup of Nations is being disrespected by some negative media coverage. The 24-team competition will feature a host of Premier League and European stars. Asking, is there ever a tournament more disrespected than the Africa Cup of Nations? Wright said media outlets were focusing on the tournament being held during the pandemic in ways they hadn't with last year's Euros. He also claimed that media bias and hypocrisy led some Western journalists to ask African players about their loyalty to their national teams against their European clubs. In a way, they wouldn't ask European players during the European Championships.
Is there ever a tournament more disrespected than the African Cup of Nations? There's no greater honour, none, as a sports person than representing your country. The coverage is completely tinged with racism, completely tinged. We played our Euros across 10 countries in the middle of a pandemic, and there's no issue at all. But Cameroon, a single country hosting a tournament, is a problem. You're getting journalists asking players, players getting asked if they will be honouring the call-ups for their national teams, if they will be honouring. Imagine if that was an English player representing the Three Lions. Have you ever heard anybody asking an English player if will he be honouring the call-up? Can you imagine the furore? Loads of the best players in Europe right now are African.
More than half of black children in the UK are now growing up in poverty, a new analysis of official data has revealed. According to the Labour Party research based on government figures for households that have a relatively low income, black children are now more than twice as likely to be growing up poor as white children. The figures identify households with relative low income as being below 60% of the median, the standard definition for poverty. The research shows that over the last decade, the total number of black children in poor households more than doubled, an increase partly explained by the overall size of the demographic also increasing. The proportion of black children living in poverty went up from 42% in 2010-2011 to 53% in 2019-2020, the most recent year for which the data is available. The figures were released to the Guardian newspaper by the Labour Party, which described them as evidence of conservative incompetence and denialism about the existence of structural racism. Halima Begum, chief executive of Runnymede Trust, the race equality think tank, said the Labour figures, although not surprising, were nevertheless cause for considerable concern. She said there are not cynical inequalities that are being flagged, but systematic shortcomings that must be reversed quickly. But the problems are nuanced. Black children face racism and poverty, but poverty is not defined exclusively by race. So, for more than a decade, the Runnymede Trust has argued that you can't simply solve the issue of racial inequality without also addressing socio-economic disparities. In response to Labour claims that the figures were an indictment of its record, a government spokesman highlighted separate figures showing that in 2019-2020 there were 300,000 fewer children living in absolute low income after housing costs than they were in 2010. The UK's first specialist black bookshop is to close after more than 55 years due to financial problems, it has been revealed. New Beacon Books in Finsbury Park, North London, first opened in 1966 and staved off the threat of closure as recently as 2016. But with financial pressures exacerbated by coronavirus adding to the competition from online retailers such as Amazon, it has been confirmed that the store will close its physical outlet in Stroud Green Road and move online only. Creating a space for black writers, New Beacon Books was founded by the activist John LaRose and his partner Sarah White. And that's all we have time for this week. Join us again for our next bulletin and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Selbin Kabote and this has been UK Africa News Update.